You lost, old man? The voice came from the left, low, amused, carrying the particular laziness of a man who has never once worried about the answer to any question he has asked. The speaker was a large man named Cutter, though no one outside the chapter knew his given name, and no one inside it used it anymore. He was 43 years old and built like something structural, with forearms like bridge cable and a beard that had been growing since the Clinton administration. He wore a cut with patches that told a story about the past 15 years of his life, in dense, overlapping iconography, and he stood at the edge of the gravel parking lot of the Crossroads Tavern outside Clarksville, Tennessee, with his thumbs in his belt and the easy confidence of a man on his own ground. Behind him, in a loose semicircle that had formed with the practiced naturalness of men who had stood in loose semicircles before, were 5 others. Different sizes. Same posture. Same quality of attention, not hostile yet, not quite, but carrying hostility the way a sky carries rain, fully loaded, waiting for the right conditions to release. The old man at the center of the semicircle did not answer immediately. His name was Raymond Ellis Cord, and he was 77 years old. He had parked his truck, a 10-year-old GMC Sierra, dark gray, work-scarred, at the far end of the lot, away from the cluster of motorcycles near the entrance, because he was 77 and had been parking away from other vehicles long enough that it was simply habit. He was walking back from the entrance, where he had discovered the bar was closed on Tuesdays before 6, and he was returning to his truck with the unhurried deliberateness of a man who has encountered minor inconveniences for so many decades that the category no longer merits urgency. He wore a flannel shirt in dark green, worn canvas work pants, and boots that had carried him through enough terrain that they had stopped complaining about any of it. In his left hand was a cane, not the medical supply kind, not adjustable aluminum, but a hand-turned wooden cane, dark with age and use, the kind a man makes or has made for him when he has come to terms with what his body requires and has decided to require it with dignity. His right hand was free. His eyes, when they came up to find Cutter, were the pale gray of early morning ice, not warm, not cold as threat, simply flat and present and possessed of a depth that absorbed the semicircle and the parking lot and the situation without registering any of it as particularly remarkable. "Not lost," Raymond said. His voice was a low, weathered sound, each word measured like a man spending from a supply he knows the value of. "Bar's closed. Going home." See, that's the thing. Cutter moved 2 steps closer, not rushing it, performing the movement for the audience behind him. "This lot's kind of our lot on Tuesdays. Has been for a while. And we don't really know you. You don't need to know me," Raymond said. The simplicity of it landed wrong for Cutter, not because it was rude, but because it was entirely without fear. And the absence of fear in a situation he had engineered to produce fear was the specific thing he found intolerable. He looked back at his men briefly, then returned to Raymond. "Old man with a cane, talking to me like that." He shook his head with a performance of good-natured incredulity. "That takes a certain kind of nerve." "Or a certain kind of experience," Raymond said. A man named Rook, second largest in the group, with a shaved head and the dense, settled quality of a man who had thrown his share of punches, laughed, not a friendly laugh. The laugh of a man recognizing an escalation opportunity. "Experience," he repeated, savoring it. "What kind of experience you got, Pops? Korea? Vietnam? You look about that old." He looked at the cane, or maybe just experience falling down. The gravel lot was half an acre of crushed stone behind a 2-story roadhouse with a neon beer sign in the window that wasn't lit yet and a dumpster against the side wall that smelled of last week's decisions. The Tennessee evening was coming in cool from the north, carrying the first real edge of autumn. And the light at this hour was that particular low-angle gold that makes everything look more significant than it might otherwise. In the distance, on the state highway a quarter-mile east, the intermittent sound of truck traffic. Otherwise quiet. The kind of quiet that exists specifically to contain what is about to happen in it. Cutter moved again, a different kind of movement this time, the third stage, closing distance with intent rather than theater. He stopped 4 feet from Raymond. "I think you're going to want to leave your keys on the hood of that truck," he said, "and your wallet, and then we'll let you walk away and not worry about the truck until tomorrow." That's me being generous. Raymond looked at him. He looked at Cutter with the flat, present attention of a man making an assessment, and the assessment took approximately 3 seconds, and when it was complete, Raymond's expression had not changed in any way that Cutter could read, which was its own kind of answer. "I'm not leaving my keys," Raymond said. "I'm going to walk to my truck. I'd recommend you let me." Cutter reached forward and placed one large hand on Raymond's shoulder, the hand of a man who has learned that physical contact changes the calculus, that once you have put your hand on someone, the rules are different. His fingers pressed down through the flannel, and the gravel lot dissolved. Not the way a dream fades. The way a flame goes out, one instant present, the next instant gone, replaced entirely by something else. The smell of gravel dust and spilled beer and autumn evening was replaced, instantly and completely, by the smell of red clay and vehicle exhaust, and the copper penny smell of blood, and the particular acrid reek of a structure fire burning with everything synthetic inside it. Mosul, Iraq, 2004. The second battle. The one after the first one that was supposed to have been the last one. Raymond was 34 years old, 12 years into his service with the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, and he had been awake for 31 hours, in a city that had decided in the course of 3 days to become something other than a city and more like a continuous problem requiring continuous solutions. His team had been conducting a direct action on a mid-level network facilitator when the building 2 doors down had been hit, not by them. And the explosion had done what explosions do: rewritten the geometry of the immediate environment, collapsed one wall of the target structure, and produced approximately 40 seconds of perfect chaos during which Raymond had moved through what remained of the building and found, in the rubble of the back room, 2 things: the intelligence package they had come for, and a man. The man was American. Not military, civilian, embedded contractor, something in communications or logistics or the half-world of support functions that move through combat zones attached to nothing and protected by the theory that nobody was targeting them. He was in his 30s, moderate build, with the particular vacancy of a man whose brain had been knocked sideways by blast over pressure. Both his legs were compromised by the collapsed ceiling. He was breathing. He would stop breathing shortly if he remained where he was, because the structure was continuing to fail and the secondary collapse was not a matter of if. Raymond's team leader, a man named Sergeant Major Victor Hess, call sign Anchor, was in the street managing the outer cordon and calling for exfil. The exfil window was 8 minutes. The building was not survivable in 9. Raymond made the calculation in approximately 4 seconds. He was not a large man. He was a precisely built man. The build of someone who had spent 15 years developing exactly the physical capacity the job required, and nothing decorative beyond it. The contractor outweighed him by 20 pounds and had the additional weight of rubble across both legs. Raymond cleared the rubble with his hands and with a pry bar he had been carrying, which was a tool not everyone carried, and which he carried because he had been on enough operations to know that buildings ended up in your way more often than doctrine accounted for. He got the man free. He carried him, not dragged, carried. because the street required speed and dragging was slower than carrying over rubble. 30 meters through the remaining structure and into the street where Anchor and the rest of the team were. He had covered approximately 20 of those 30 meters when the sniper round found him. It hit him in the left thigh, a through and through that took a piece of the femur with it. Not enough to drop the bone, but enough to compromise the structural integrity of the leg in ways that would become fully apparent later, in a field hospital in Valor, when the surgeon showed him the imaging and explained what the next 4 months would look like and what the following 40 years would look like after that. He covered the remaining 10 meters. The contractor was evacuated. He lived. His name was David Paulson, and he sent Raymond a letter every year on the anniversary without fail, a letter Raymond kept in a shoebox in his bedroom closet. 20 letters now, each one beginning the same way. I don't know how to say this again, but I'm going to try. The exfil came with 30 seconds to spare. The building came down behind them. In the debrief, Sergeant Major Hess had described Raymond's actions in the language of official citation: deliberate, precise, compressed to the formal grammar of bravery rendered bureaucratic. In private, standing outside the hospital tent in Balad while Raymond was still in surgery, Hess had said to the team, "That is the bravest thing I have seen in 22 years. Write it down. You'll want to remember it when you think you know what brave looks like." The femur had healed imperfectly. The leg had healed differently from the leg it had been before. The cane was the consequence, not of weakness, but of the specific mathematics of what the leg had been asked to do and what it had given in return. The gravel lot came back, Cutter's hand on his shoulder, the semicircle, the autumn light going gold across the crushed stone. Raymond looked at Cutter's hand, then at Cutter. His expression had not changed. His posture had not changed. He was simply present, utterly and completely, in the way of a man who had been in worse situations and understood at a cellular level that this was not one of them. 40 feet away, at the edge of the lot nearest the highway, a young man named Jake Pruitt sat in a dented Chevy Cavalier with the window down, eating a gas station sandwich and watching what was happening with the growing certainty that it was going to become something that required a decision from him. Jake was 24 and worked at the tire shop across the highway and had pulled into this lot simply because it was closer than the shop parking, and he ate lunch here sometimes when the crossroads was open. He did not know the old man. He did not know the bikers except by reputation, which was enough to have kept him in his car rather than walking to the entrance when he saw the semicircle forming. He watched for 90 more seconds. Then he watched Cutter's hand go to the old man's shoulder. Jake Pruitt took out his phone. He did not call 911. He called a number he had in his contacts under the name Big Ray, a man he had met once at a Labor Day cookout at his uncle's house. An enormous, quiet man in his late 40s who had never said what he did for a living, but who had given Jake his card and said, "If you ever see something that needs to be handled and you don't know who handles it, call this number." The card had no title on it, only a name and a number. Jake had kept it because it had seemed like the kind of card you kept. The call connected on the first ring. Jake described what he was looking at, the location, the old man, the 6 bikers, the hand on the shoulder. Silence, 2 seconds. 3, describe the old man. Jake described him. The flannel, the boots, the cane, the GMC Sierra at the far end of the lot. He mentioned, because it seemed relevant, that the old man didn't seem scared at all, which struck him as either very stupid or the opposite of very stupid, and he wasn't sure which. "The cane," the voice said. "Is it wooden? Dark? Hand-turned? Not adjustable?" Jake looked. Yeah, that's exactly what it is." The silence this time lasted 4 full seconds. When the voice returned, It had shed whatever professional composure it had been wearing and was doing something different, tighter, compressed, stripped down to the frequency of urgency. "What is your exact location?" Jake gave it. "Stay in your vehicle. Do not exit under any circumstances. Do not call 911. Do you understand me? Yeah, do not call 911. I am handling this. 10 minutes. The call ended. Jake stared at his phone. At Fort Campbell, 22 miles north, a phone call moved in 6 seconds from a retired master sergeant named Dwayne Briggs to an active duty command sergeant major named Torres, who took it outside a planning session and listened to 4 words, "Cord is in trouble," and was already moving by the 3rd. He made 2 calls from the parking lot, both brief, both to numbers that were answered immediately and required no explanation beyond the name and the location. By the time he reached his vehicle, the shape of what was happening next had already been determined by people who understood what the name Raymond Ellis Cord meant, and what the appropriate response to a threat to that name looked like. The word went sideways and outward through a network that had no official designation and no chain of command, but operated with the specific coherence of people who had trusted each other in places where trust was the only currency that spent. It reached men who were off-duty, out of uniform, 40 minutes from the lot in 3 different directions. It reached men who had been grocery shopping, and men who had been watching their kids' soccer practice, and men who had been doing the ordinary things that men who have spent careers in extraordinary places do when they come home. Each of them, upon receiving the message, stopped what they were doing and started moving. They came in civilian vehicles, 8 of them, arriving from 3 directions within 11 minutes, parking at the edges of the lot and along the highway frontage road with the unhurried precision of men who knew exactly how to position themselves without appearing to be positioning themselves. They got out of their vehicles without urgency. They did not run. They moved across the gravel with the quiet, ground-eating efficiency of people for whom movement through difficult spaces was as natural as breathing. They ranged from their early 40s to their mid-50s. They were not large as a group, not the television version of special operations, not the theatrical broadness of men who have been selected for appearance. They were the actual version, weary, precisely built, with the particular quality of stillness in motion that comes from 15 or 20 years of work that required you to become invisible while remaining completely lethal. They wore jeans and fleece jackets and work boots. They looked, at a glance, like men who had stopped on their way home from somewhere. At a glance, Cutter had not been paying attention to the lot's edges. He had been paying attention to the old man. He became aware of the 8 men the way you become aware of a temperature change, gradually, then suddenly. Then with the full understanding that the temperature had been changing for some time before you noticed. The semicircle that had been 6 bikers was now contained within a larger geometry that had assembled itself around them, and the men at the points of that larger geometry were looking at the center of it with an attention that was not aggressive, it was simply total. The attention of men for whom attention is a professional condition. Nobody had drawn anything. Nobody had said anything. Nobody needed to. Cutter's hand came off Raymond's shoulder. Slowly, carefully, the way a hand comes off something when the body understands what the mind is still processing, that the situation has changed in a fundamental way, that the rules that applied 60 seconds ago were a temporary condition that has now expired. The largest of the 8 men, Command Sergeant Major Torres, off-duty in a Carhartt jacket and jeans, stopped 6 feet from Cutter and looked at him with the specific expression of a man who does not need anything from this conversation except its conclusion. He said, quietly and without theater, "I'd suggest everybody get on their bikes." Cutter looked at the men around the perimeter. He was not stupid. Arrogance and stupidity are different deficiencies. He understood geometry. He understood the quality of the attention directed at him. He understood, in the way the body understands things before the mind catches up, that the 8 men standing quietly at the edges of this lot were operating from a set of capabilities that made the current balance of the situation something other than what it had been 90 seconds ago. "We were just talking," he said. His voice had changed. It was smaller. "Good," Torres said. "You're done." The bikes started. One by one, the way they would have started at any other end to any other evening, without particular hurry, without the performance of retreat. The chapter rode out of the lot and onto the highway and became headlights moving north, and then nothing at all. The 8 men watched them go. Then Torres walked across the gravel to Raymond, who was standing where he had been standing throughout, the cane in his left hand, his right hand at his side, his expression the same flat, present calm it had been since the beginning. Torres stopped in front of him. He looked at him for a moment. The flannel, the boots, the cane, the gray eyes that were looking back at him with the specific quality of a man who had expected this and is not surprised by it, and is quietly grateful without needing to perform the gratitude. "Ray," Torres said. "Dwayne called you," Raymond said. It was not a question. "Jake Pruitt called Dwayne. Good kid." Raymond looked toward the Cavalier at the edge of the lot. Jake was still inside it, his window down, watching with the expression of a man who has seen something he will be describing for the rest of his life and is not sure anyone will believe him. Raymond walked over. He stopped at the driver's side window. Jake looked up at him with the expression of a young man recalibrating several things at once. "You made a good call," Raymond said. "Thank you." "Who are?" Jake started. He stopped. He looked at the 8 men standing in the lot. He looked at Raymond. "Who are you?" Raymond looked at him for a moment. "Retired," he said. He reached into his shirt pocket and produced a card. He held it out. Jake took it. It had a name on it. Just a name. No title, no affiliation, and a phone number. "If you ever see something that needs to be handled," Raymond said, "call that number." He walked to the GMC Sierra. He got in. He drove home, west on the state highway into the last of the evening light, the cane on the seat beside him where he could reach it. Torres watched him go. He looked at the lot, the empty spaces where the bikes had been, the crushed stone, the dumpster against the wall, the neon sign now beginning to glow in the window as the crossroads prepared to open. He had known Raymond Cord for 19 years. He had been under his command for 11 of them. He had watched him work in places that had no names on any unclassified map. He had watched him make decisions that required a specific quality of character that training could sharpen but could not manufacture. He had seen him carry a man out of a building that was actively collapsing and return to work the following week without discussing it, because that was the work, and discussing it was not part of the work. He thought about the 6 bikers who had surrounded the man in this parking lot. He thought about what they had seen, an old man with a cane, slow-moving, unarmed, alone. He thought about what they had not seen. Everything that the cane meant. Everything the walk meant. Everything the stillness meant. He thought about the distance between those two things, and how that distance was the entire story. 2 weeks later, Cutter rode alone to the crossroads on a Wednesday evening, before the others arrived. He sat at the bar with a beer he barely touched, and thought about the 8 men in the parking lot, and thought about the old man who had not moved, not flinched, not shown the slightest crack in his composure from the first word to the last. He had been in situations before. He had assessed men before. He understood at some level he had not yet found the words for that he had encountered something in that gravel lot that was categorically different from anything he had encountered before. He did not know what it was. He thought about it for a long time. He left a 50 on the bar for a $12 beer and rode home and did not go back to the crossroads on Tuesdays. There is a specific kind of man who becomes invisible as he ages, not because he has diminished, but because the world has stopped knowing how to read him. His gear is put away. His unit is declassified, or still classified, or simply forgotten. He drives a 10-year-old truck and parks away from other vehicles and uses a cane made of turned wood because his femur was broken, doing something the citation described in formal language that did not contain the words, and he kept moving. Because that was not the kind of language citations used, though it was the most important sentence in the story. These men park at the far end of lots. They arrive early and find the door locked and turn back without complaint. They carry their histories in the wear on their boots and the turn of a wooden cane and the particular flat calm with which they assess a semicircle of men who believe they are dangerous. They are waiting, if they need to be, for no one. But the ones who know them are not far. If you were moved by Raymond's story of quiet courage and timeless wisdom, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and be sure to subscribe to Veterans Valor for more stories of America's unassuming heroes.